All right, here's our last video for this section. We're going to be looking at how to graph a cosine function with transformations. Now, the steps are the same. You're going through, you're identifying the amplitude, the period, the shifts. You draw your midline, you find your 5 key points, and you draw the graph through the 5 key points. Now, what we need to do is, if we look at cosine here, cosine's a little different. Remember, on sine, we were finding our 3 points along the midline and then our maximum and our minimum. Now you'll notice with cosine, our 5 key points are a little different. We've got 2 maximums. We've got the maximum at the beginning and the maximum at the end of our cycle. The minimum is halfway through our cycle. And now the x-intercepts are going to be 1/4 and 3/4 of the way. Now I say x-intercepts, but again, remember, these are going to be where, it wouldn't hurt if you trying to kind of sketch this as we go along. If you have a piece of paper, sketch out your graph and try to pause this and sketch it while we go through this. So let's identify the key characteristics first. Now we've got our amplitude and period we can get from A and B. So remember, our amplitude is going to be 5. Our period is going to be, here we've got a b value of 1/2. So our period is going to be 2 pi over 1/2, which is 4 pi. Now think about what this means. Instead of having one wave get drawn in a horizontal length of 2 pi, now we're stretching it out to 4 pi. So this is going to be a horizontal stretch. We're going to be elongating the cycle. We've got a horizontal shift. Here we've got x minus 3 pi. So we're shifting this 3 pi now, and we don't have a vertical shift. So we are going to have x-intercepts here that we go. If you're drawing this as we go along, our midline is the x-axis. So you're actually going to have your 2 x-intercepts are going to be going through the midline, which is the x-axis. So the points we want to find, the 5 key points, first of all, on our midline, okay, so in this case, on the x-axis, it's going to be at, we get pi, that's just 1/4 of our period, so 1/4 times pi, and then 3/4 times pi gives us 3 pi. So normally, we would be having our 2 x-intercepts at pi and 3 pi. But because we're shifting to the right 3 units, you have to add 3 pi to both. So our 2 points on our midline, so 1/4 of the way and 3/4 of the way, are going to be at 4 pi and 6 pi. Okay, so those are 2 of our key points. The other ones are going to be our maximums. So at the start, which is 0, and the end of our period, which is 4 pi. But because we're shifting to the right, we have to add 3 pi to each. So the start of our cycle is going to be at 3 pi, the end at 7 pi, and our amplitude is 5. So our maximums are going to be at y equals 5. So here's how we get our maximum points. Now the last point that we need to graph is our minimum. Now remember, our minimum is at halfway through our period. So if we take 4 pi times 1/2, we're going to get 2 pi. So we get a minimum of 2 pi. But again, we're shifting that to the right 3 pi units, and our minimum is going to be at -5 because that's how far down our graph goes. So our minimum point is going to be at 5 pi and -5. So if you look at these 5 points right here, you see that our graph starts, our cycle starts at x equals 3 pi and ends at x equals 7 pi. Go down to our minimum, come back up, cross the x-axis, and finish up at our maximum, which is at 7 pi. So here's what our graph will look like right here. Now again, remember, we're shifted, so these are the 5 points we're looking at, from 3 pi to 7 pi. So we've got our 2 maximums, our minimum, and then we cross our midline, which in this case is the x-axis, at 4 pi and 6 pi. Okay? Again, I know it's a lot. There's a lot of stuff in these videos, so don't hesitate to go back and rewatch it. Make sure you're getting all the notes down. What I want you guys to do now, here's your function. I want you to write down the 5 key points for this function. So go ahead and write those down. List them all in the text box that pops up right now. Okay, now just like we've been doing for all the other videos, I've got a Google form that I'm going to have you go to. Make sure you go to that Google form, fill in all the information. What I need is all of the stuff related to this section, all of the questions, and then at the end I want any questions that you have about this section only. So go ahead and go to that link now.